Welcome back to episode 2 of this project. We already have the infrastructure in place to pull the amount due. Just click in here. I'm going to delete that old formula. I'm going to type XLOOKUP, hit tab. My lookup value is going to be RS. Now notice that when I typed in that S, it limited the values that are available for selection. If I backspace where I only have R, notice I have all these functions, all these other things that I can choose to place here, but I don't want all that. So I type in S and it limits it down to only those items that have RS as the beginning of their name. I still have a function RSQ. If I wanted to get rid of that, I can just type in an A and it would eliminate that from the list. So that is another reason why I name my ranges and tables the way I do, is so that it makes it easier, like I believe I mentioned before, to write formulas and code, etc. So in this case, what we want is the selected set key. So I'm down arrow to that. I hit tab. That's going to be our lookup value. Now our lookup array is going to be TBL. Notice again, when I type T, there's all of these items to choose from. When I type TBL, I am now down to just a list of 3 items. We want table salary schedule data, so I arrow down to that, tab, opening bracket. Notice it has a list of all the different columns in the table available for selection. I arrow down, I select key, closing bracket, and then our return array is going to be TBL salary again with the opening bracket, and we want salary rate, closing bracket. If not found, we want no value, and we want the exact search. 1824. So class H is our salary schedule, 15, 1 range and step. So we come over here and we look, class H, 15 and 1, 1824. So that works. So we could call it a day and say, well, we have come up with a solution for this part of the spreadsheet, and now let's move on to other earnings. But what we want to do is we want to add a little more sophistication to the spreadsheet, because what we don't want to do is have somebody enter something here that doesn't work, and then we get to no value. And maybe somebody who doesn't really know how to use a spreadsheet, they don't know what they did wrong. And it could just be they were typing in what they think is correct, but maybe they put in an extra S, or they got a little typo, and it's maybe not as easy to see, and it becomes hard to troubleshoot. So before we get into adding data validation to these items here, these 3 items, we want to explain what no value here means in the amount due, so that it can point the user in an appropriate direction for troubleshooting. So we're going to say if amount due is no value, then the salary schedule range and step combination is not found in the salary schedule data table. Come down here, we're going to merge and center, wrap the text. It looks like we need to do one more row, so we're going to undo that. There you go. And now we're going to highlight that yellow and put a little border around it. So if amount due is no value, then the salary schedule range and step combination is not found in the salary schedule data table. So that should help somebody when they get this to understand, oh, well, maybe something is wrong here. But to eliminate the possibility of a typo or some simple kind of error like that, what we want to do is we want to add data validation to this cell here for the salary schedules. And then what we also want to do is add data validation to the range and step based upon the salary schedule chosen. So then we're going to come over to our reference and starting here at row 3. And the reason I start at row 3 is that way I have the ability to add comments above the tables or the list, whatever I may have. And we're going to call this salary schedule names. Going to make that a gray to indicate it's a header. And then here we're going to say this equals TBL salary schedule data opening bracket salary schedule closing bracket. Notice that it now has basically all of the values, all of the rows in this table for the salary schedule column. What we don't want is the souped, and subshaft and stip none, etc. multiple times, because we only want it to show up one time in our data validation list. So, and what is happening here is this is what is called a spill. Since I put in one formula, but there are many values that result from that formula, what Excel does is it does what it calls a spill of all those values here below this cell in which the formula is in. And you can tell what cells are in the spill by this blue line here. So if we went down to the very bottom, we'd see that, and you'll see that here in a minute when I limit the list. When I click here, notice that the formula is grayed out, meaning that I cannot alter or edit this because it is part of this spill. The only cell that I can change for the formula is this original, which creates the spill. If I came in here and I typed something, doesn't matter, then I get this spill error because it's saying, hey, you got something here where I need to spill into, and so now I have a spill error. And, you know, the thing is, that could be down here and not on the screen. But as long as you see the spill error, you know that you've got something that's blocking Excel's ability to spill those values. So I come into this first cell here, and I'm going to use the unique function. And now it has only a unique return of the salary schedule names. And here you can see the bottom of the blue line, meaning that only this here is part of this spill. Now we come back to here and we come into data validation. We want to limit this to a list, and our source is going to be this first cell that has the formula in it for our salary schedules. And because it's a spill, we don't necessarily want to do this, because if we add or subtract salary schedules names, then we would have to come back in and change this range here in our data validation. And who's going to remember to do that? Or it's just a pain to do it if you do remember to do it. So we just want to do a click here, and then because it's a spill, we put in a hash tag mark, and that then captures all of the items in the spill. And we say OK. And now when I click here, you can see that yes, it captured all of those items in that spill. So what we want to do is limit the selection of range in our data validation to the salary schedule that was chosen. So when we look at class H, we can see, of course, it does have that 15. So let me open up another salary schedule. This one I think is a good example. Yes, so notice here we have this row here which goes through 1 through 6, and then here we have a range or a value of 2, which only has a column of 2 and 3. So it doesn't even have a column of 1 through 6, whereas in most, it seems like in most of the other salary schedules, your columns are uniform, meaning that if row 1 has 6 columns, then row 2 will have 6 columns, row 3 will have 6 columns, etc. for the entire salary schedule. But here we have kind of an irregular salary schedule where you don't have that. So we want to be able to only having available for selection those range items that tie to the salary schedule. And then secondly, tying the step to the range so that you only have the steps available that are related to the range. How are we going to do that? So we're going to go over here to reference, and here we're going to type values for range. Here we're going to type count if, because this is going to be our count if formula. And here we're going to type match, because this is going to be our match formula. So we're just doing this again to help somebody who may need to come in and troubleshoot or maintain our spreadsheet later. They can kind of see what is going on here. So the count if, so what we want to do is we want to be able to count how many class H values there are. And so we're going to say equals count if range. So our range is going to be TBL salary schedule data, and it's going to be the salary schedule. Criteria is that it is equal to the R salary schedule selected, and there's 282 of those. And what we're doing here is we're building some infrastructure so that we can use an offset to create a range or a spill that then becomes dynamic based upon what our selection of salary schedule is. For our match, what we want to do is we want to find the location of the first reference of that salary schedule in our salary schedule data table, so that we know with our offset where we're going to start our beginning row, and then our count if will tell us how many rows to pick up in our selection. We're going to type equals match. Our lookup value is going to be our salary schedule selected, and our lookup array is going to be table salary schedule, and it's going to be salary schedule. And our match type is going to be an exact match. So what this will require is it will require us to make sure that our data here is sorted by salary schedule. And while we're thinking about that, we should go ahead and add that note here. Table must be sorted by the let's put sal sched column in order for formulas to work appropriately. And the purpose of that is, let's say for class H, here's our salary schedule data, but we've added a column or a row or several rows or several columns to the salary schedule. And instead of coming in here and deleting all of the class H and then adding them again at the end of the table, the user instead, they use the approach that I had showed previously, where I just copy and paste those salary schedule values here so I don't have to retype all the class H. And then for the additional rows or columns, I go to the bottom of the table and I add those there. Then that's going to mess up our formulas. And so that's why we're saying that the table must be sorted by salary schedule. So it keeps all of the class H together, so that when we're looking here, the count, it's not going to pick up items that are not in the class H salary schedule. So to say that further, so it would actually count correctly the number of times that class H showed up in the table. However, 282, 82 of those rows may be at the end of the table separate from the others. And so what would happen, though, is this would pick up then 82 rows of whatever follows the class H that is here, because it doesn't know, oh, I got to now skip to the bottom and pick up those last 82 rows. I hope that makes sense. What we will do here is we will highlight this as gray to reflect that this is a title. And then here, we're just going to color these as yellow and put a border around it, just so it shows that these are something that is together. And this is going to be ranges. So now we need a dynamic way of pulling only those values that are related to our salary selection. And we're going to do that via an offset. Now that we have these values, we're going to create some ranges. This is going to be our reference salary schedule range count. And this is going to be our reference, so I know what tab it's on, salary schedule range start. Now I come in here, I type my offset. My reference is going to be here because this is where I want the offset to begin before it starts moving. And so now I type in the comma. The rows is going to be our reference, and it's going to be the range start because that is where I want it to move to that number where it starts. And my columns are going to be 0, meaning I don't want to move away from this row column. And my height is going to be the R reference range count, meaning give me that many rows, and I'm done. I don't need a width. And so as you can see, now I have all of the values that they have spilled over for the values for class H. So let me see, there are 6 of these, count. And when I come over here, there are 6. And so it is starting my match 721, which is my range start, is telling it go down to 721, row 721 in here, which you can't really tell that that's what this is. But if you subtract the 7 rows here that above, you can see that, yeah, that's 7. That is row 721. And then don't move a column, so stay in that column, but give me 282 count. And so now if I come into here and I type in, because I don't want these to repeat, I use the unique function. Now you can see I go down to 53, where if I scroll down to the end of the class H, 53 is the number of the last value in row. Now I have the values I want and need for my range. Now I come into here, I go to data, data validation, list. My source is going to be here. And now I only show 7. Now why do I show 7 only? Because I forgot to put in my hashtag. There you go. The hashtag to pick up all of the spill values. We will make this gray to indicate that it is a header. And now we're going to work on the values for the steps. Let's just copy this over here. We will change the formulas, obviously, but just so I don't have to retype all that stuff, because remember from my first episode, I said I was lazy. Do that to indicate that that's a header. Might as well get that set up. Now, I think since I am making a selection based on salary schedule and range, I need to come over into here and add another column. And this is going to be sal sched row. And so this is going to equal the salary schedule and the row. Now my count if is going to say, instead of salary schedules, I can just come in here and highlight this, and I'm going to say salary schedule row. And we're going to say we can leave that the way that is, and our salary schedule range selected. Now notice that changed that to 6. That's very good because, as we can see, there are only 6 values of row 7. So that is working right. Now the match formula will need to combine those two salary. So we already have the salary schedule selected. So now we need to combine also the range selected. And then here we want to change this to salary schedule row. And that is telling us, well, that starts at 769. Which 15, come down here, and if we did the math, we'd see that, yeah, that's 769. Now we need to give these two cells a range name. So I'm going to just come in here. I'm going to highlight this, Control C. I'm going to come into here, and so I'm not retyping everything, and I'm going to change this to say step count. Because again, I'm lazy and I don't want to be retyping stuff I don't need to. And so this is step start. And also it guarantees that my names are pretty similar in format. Now our next step is then to add our offset for the steps. Equals offset. Our reference is going to be the column. Our rows, meaning where are we going to start, is going to be here. And notice when I just click it, it selects the range name. So I didn't even have to type that. Our columns, we don't want to move any columns, so we want to stay in this column. And our height is going to be here. And we don't need a width. So we close that, and now we've got this spill here. We come back over into here. We come to data validation. We make this a list. Our source is going to be this cell plus the hashtag. And now we can see, okay, we only have 6, which we can choose from. So let's test this. If I go to step and, so let me go to step and, which I believe is here. Yes. No value because there is no 15 row here. And so now I come into here and let's select 2 because I believe 2 is limited to only those 3 or those 2 items there. Now when I click into here, yes, I only have those options available to me. If I click on 1, now you can see I have 6 available to me because there are 6 row 1s. 4 only has 4, so let's see if I change this to say 4. Yeah, now I only have 4. So that is all working brilliantly now. Now our next step, since that is all working brilliantly, well, we can delete these. These no longer, we no longer need those. is to go down here and fix other earnings. But as we're running a little long in this episode, we're going to go ahead and call it here. And all that we did today was we went in and we added these lists here in our reference tab, which drives our data validations here. And we put in this formula so that it is actually picking up the value based on our selections here. Now, unfortunately, since I'm not using a macro, I can't come in here and say, well, when I choose this, make these blank so that I'm forced to now go in and select something that makes sense, as opposed to just having it show the no value until somebody comes in here and clicks it. Now, if they're using a spreadsheet often, they're going to know to do that. But if you hand this to a new person, you forget to tell them to do that, they may get confused for a while as to why whenever they change the salary schedule selection that they get a no value. Or they try to come down here and look for a step or range that doesn't exist according to our rules that we set up. They may get confused and then try to manually make changes. Lady comes into the doctor's office, says, Doctor, my husband thinks he's a refrigerator. Well, that's not so bad. It's a rather harmless problem. Lady says, well, maybe, but he sleeps with his mouth open and the light keeps me awake. So who's the delusional one in that joke? I don't know. That's funny, though. All right, that is it. And when we come back in our next episode, we will work on the other earnings piece. So thank you for joining me, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.